Well, it's time now for our Focus report, which takes us this Friday to Ivory Coast, where violent youth gangs are spreading terror across the capital, Abidjan. For several weeks now, these groups of delinquents, some as young as 10, have gone on the rampage, staging brutal and sometimes deadly knife and machete attacks. With a poor security response, exasperated residents are taking matters into their own hands, and lynchings are fast becoming commonplace. This report by our team in Abidjan, Liane de Bassompierre, Sarah Sisman, Marie Desmarques and Mélodie Aïssi.
In a neighbourhood north of Abidjan, a family in mourning is ravaged in pain. They've lost a man who was a brother, a son, a father, taken from them several days ago. A tragedy that has rocked the country. 32-year-old Yao Kofi was a police officer. He was assassinated by a machete-wielding gang while on his way home.
This is such an atrocity. His blood was shed. And it really hurts my heart. And every time I'll think about what happened, that he was butchered like that, I will feel this desire for revolt, for vengeance. I will feel hate.
Hatred in the face of violence that has become the new norm.
Every day we hear that those microbes, those germs have killed so-and-so, wounded so-and-so. Ivorians are not safe. They're not safe, whatever side they're on.
In this image, the policeman, minutes after the attack, his throat slit, body slashed. The trademark of microbes, germs, the name given to the teenage gangs, a name derived from a film about young criminals in the favelas of Rio. In Abidjan, the phenomenon was also born in the slums of the working-class neighbourhoods like here in Abobo. During the 2010 crisis, children were used as small hands by armed groups. Children of war now idle in this environment. This is one of their strongholds. There's little cachets in the woods, places of drug sales and use called smokehouses. Here's one of the few guys who admits ownership of one of these places. He pretends not to be one of the microbes, but admits having already perpetrated several crimes at the hand of a knife.
Lui, il est blessé, avec machette, il est blessé. Mes parents avaient les problèmes de moyens et puis en ce moment, c'est venu trouver que non, la Côte d'Ivoire était dans une crise. Donc là, il a commencé maintenant à agresser, à voler.
During the interview, our guide meets another young man in the stronghold of microbes.
Non, il n'a pas tué. Tu as blessé? Oui, il a blessé l'homme.
A few meters from us, an ex-militia lurks with a threatening demeanor and a knife in his hand, one of the microbes' favorite weapons. The teenage gangsters generally attack at nightfall, so in the streets of Abidjan, the solution has to include nocturnal organization. A hunt for microbes like tonight, the neighborhood of Williamsville, targeted by several attacks in recent weeks. On patrol, about 15 young people have set up their own self-defense group.
We can't wait all the time for the police, so we are taking charge of our own security.
We have to be here to secure the area because our parents live here, our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, our sisters, they all live here.
The young people are paid 75 a month by each family in the neighborhood, the price to be able to sleep soundly at night. This household was woken up in the middle of the night. A father who lost his son 3 weeks ago stabbed 3 times by microbes for a simple cell phone. Today, he no longer counts on the police but on mob justice.
It's not normal for people to take justice in their own hands, but at some point, we have no other choice but to defend ourselves.
An exasperated population taking the law into their own hands. In the last few days, several microbes were lynched by locals, including 2 in this pile of garbage, who were killed, as documented by the residents themselves on their phones.
La population a réussi à mettre la main sur les 2 là, et puis ils ont déchaîné contre eux, et puis on les a tués.
les a tués avec quoi?
Avec les bois, les cailloux, avec les propres machettes.
To cope with the phenomenon of microbes, in addition to numerous police operations, the Ivorian state has put in professional reintegration programs in place. Kanate is one of the beneficiaries. The ex-youth gangster has just spent 6 months in a recovery centre where he learned to sew. The free training has given him a new skill and a second chance in life.
I see this as a chance God has given to me. I'm going to seize that chance and keep on moving forward. I'll see what this brings along in the future.
Stopping les microbes and incorporating former rebels into society remains a huge security challenge in Ivory Coast.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined in the studio by our guest, security specialist Emmanuel Dupuy. Hello, thank you very much for being with us. Could you tell us more first about the identity of these young people that are being described as germs?
Well, these young people, they are aged from 10 to 18, are a sort of legacy of the civil crisis, which led to 3,000 killed between 2010 and 2011. They are a legacy because it's not the first time that they are active. They appeared in October 2015, just in the outskirts of the presidential elections. The government, which was elected, Alassane Ouattara's government and its party RDR, said they were going to treat that problem and this phenomenon. Unfortunately, 5 years after, 3 years after, I'm telling 5 years after, because there's a sort of linkage which is made with these populations, the grievances of these populations, and the perspective of the elections, the the elections which will take place in 2020 may, of course, be a rising in which you may have a sort of political agenda concerning these gangs. These gangs look very similar to what you can find in Latin America, what you can find in the favelas. This is why they are named after the film City of God, which was issued in 2002. And the maras, which you can find in Central America. What is essential is why the state cannot cope with that situation. There's some critics, very strong critics, against the incurrency of the state, of the impossibility to take over the security agenda, global security agenda. During the 3 last months, there has been military mutiny, last one dated from May of this year. There has been spectacular evasions in prisons. The last one, 3 of September, took out a huge number of prisoners. And of course, you have to have you have to put in emphasis the fact that there is a sort of paradox as this population are trying to find money, are trying to cope with a very dreadful situation. The price of cacao has been lowered for 40% during last year. And of course, that has a direct impact on the 8% growth of Ivory Coast. And this is the paradox. Ivory Coast was supposed to be the strong state inside West Africa. And we can see now, in the horizon of the political agenda which is coming, that it is not precisely the case. And this is why there's been a lot of pressure, a lot of criticism against the fact that Alassane Ouattara and his former Minister of Interior, Ahmed Bakayoko, did not cope with the situation. And your reportage was very precise in saying that some are arguing that the fact to determine and to name these young people as germs, as microbes, was putting a focus on them. And this is why there's a bit there has been a lot of tensions about the fact that some are arguing that there may be a political recuperation among these young, and this is why the former Minister of Interior, Ahmed Bakayoko, said we must not call them germs, but we must call them people looking for a future and trying to integrate them in the society.
Not dehumanize them.
Re-immunize them, reintegrate them in the society. Unfortunately, all of what has been attempted by the government since the first time they appeared with very violence in 2015 has not been accurate.
Because there have been measures taken to rehabilitate these young people. They're not sufficient?
Well, there has been a lot of tentatives from the international community. NGOs, such as Indigo, for example, has tried to focus on sort of using slogans. from weapons to school, bringing them back into society, reintegrate them inside their family cells, giving them a perspective. And this is precisely why there is this huge paradox, is that these people who go to loot and try to find money in what was supposed to be the most poorest area of Abidjan, which is no longer the case because now they're acting as well in the northern part of Abidjan as well as in the southern parts of Abidjan. So there is insecurity everywhere in the city. And of course, the answer to that would be more jobs, would be more public spending. But unfortunately, the crisis has not been able to pursue this perspective. Alassane Ouattara, in a recent speech a few days ago, said that everything wasn't under control. But at the same time, we have had the announcement of a lowerage of 10% of the public spending. So there is this paradox. Everyone is saying we have all what is needed to cope with the situation, but the reality is that the government is has not the capacity to act by itself.
Emmanuel Dupuy, thank you very much for having spoken to us.